So we've got these fabulous coastal scene from Northumberland, or scenes, should I say. There's all sorts. This one is quite grassy. Got this one with the fence coming around it. This one again, the coastline here, Beadnell. And oh, that's got a tissue tissue packs on it. Actually, it's not. It's top of a wing. And then this one, which is much kind of more pinkish. If you fancy doing that one, you know, that's one to do as well. Beautiful. I think that's at dusk or dawn, but I've gone for this one really because it's what I really love about our coastline is that we just get these fabulous grasses, and they're there, aren't they, across the whole of the UK. I think it's just one of those things that that is really typical, and it's nice to recreate that as well. So I am just going to move something because I think that's maybe blocking the light a bit. So just bear with me. Yeah, that's it. Move it out of the way. There we go. Yes, we've got you know, part of today is just thinking about really how we get some of these effects and how we build up these grassy banks, because a lot of people do sometimes find them a little bit tricky to start with. So we can go into details with that, but also we've got these beautiful colours. And there's so many variations of sand as well, sand colours. It's you know, quite interesting how we can warm them up or cool them down, make them more pinky, make them more purpley, and just really go with the colours that you're really inspired by, and put, you know, if you want to put all sorts of colours in there, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to go just get a little bit down, just break up this composition into chunks as usual. So, and this again is up to you exactly how much you decide to do. Now, if you want to be really straight with your horizon, you can just tape it off like that and then paint above it. But to be fair, this one, even if I put that, it's not perfectly straight, is it? It's kind of a bit higgledy-piggledy above it. So anyway, it's up to you. You can do that if you want to. A lot of people do. And then you don't have to actually draw any lines. You can just paint over the top of your tape. I'm just going to put a little bit of one there. And then all I'm going to do there, we've got this little bit of headland that comes out here just above. Can't really see too much detail on that, which is good because it's in the distance. We don't want it popping forward with loads of detail. And then we've got this lovely little bit. You can just about see some of the beach here, the beach colour. And then kind of bringing that round. And then I'm looking about halfway here. So this sea ends just a little bit above it there. So that helps us get a little bit of idea about where we're going. And then we've got a little bit of a slope on that there, not too steep. Or it goes in, just pretty much just inside where this headland goes here. So we can use that to kind of get that sweeping motion round. And we're not really doing too much in the pencil, just because we'll end up painting over it really pretty much. So I'm just going to do it nice and loosely there, and then we can pop a little bit more on afterwards. And then the only other thing I would just draw on here is just where we get these, you know, swathes of grasses, really, like patches. There's kind of a patch there. And this is just for my own benefit, really, just to see if you're struggling to find. I mean, do yours nice and lightly so we don't get it kind of coming up. And then we've got this kind of dark chunk in the middle here. So I'm just going to kind of just mark out where that dark bit is, and then we've got this where this chunk meets and kind of comes over the top there. And obviously we've got other bits that are coming further over, but I can pull those over the beach once we're doing it. And then we've almost got another section here. I mean, you might not see the same sections as me, that's absolutely fine. It's just really having some way to help you, you know, work out where you want to put everything really. So I've just gone in with 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that, just as a start anyway. I'll best do this just a little bit deeper actually. I just realised it's not as easy to see on the screen. Okie dokes. So it's just a little start with some on colours in there. So pretty much, and I'm going to go and get my all this kind of section in first with these blues, really just so that I can concentrate on those similar hues. But I mean, when you really start to look, there's just so many colours, so it's a really good idea to kind of test. I know I'm always a fan of testing the colours, so I'm going to go in with, and again, you can explore the blues in your kit. Often we've got more than one blue, so you can try that. I just got an ordinary ultramarine. Oops, I can't believe I've just done that. I've just worked it out, look, on my tester paper. I've never done that before. That's really funny. Put it back on the palette paper, that might be helpful. There we go. So I've got some ultramarine, try that again. But you could use phthalo or something like that. I'm going to go in with a little bit of a turquoisey, or you could go like use a bit of cerulean blue. And then I'm going to go in, I've got this Payne's grey, which is much darker. So this is thinking about the sky plus the sea. So Payne's grey is really much darker. I don't want to use maybe too much of that, but it's there. And then I'm going to also put a bit of purple down. I'm feeling a bit purpley pink in this sea. So obviously different kinds of purples will give you more of a blue tone or a slightly warmer pinky tone. So you can explore that as well. See what happens there. So just move my fingers out behind. Put it all in my hands. Or you could just, you know, or you could go in with a pinky. Whatever you're seeing, I think, is the most important thing here. So if you're seeing other colours, pop them down for the water and use the sky. So I'm looking at all of the different tones in this water and sky area that I might use. And then, of course, I'm going to, which we really do use quite a bit with acrylics, is some white, because we do need to be able to mix it like that. There we go. Right, so yeah, so the only thing I think when we're doing skies and seas, if you're wanting to blend colours together a bit more, so you don't end up with a lot of texture and linear effect, then it's just mixing up all the colours you might want to use and having them together, so you can blend a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to worry about that with my sky at all, because the sky is layered. So we do have this kind of nice bluey sky behind, and then some clouds overlaying that. So we'll look at how to do that. So I'm actually going to build up my layers anyway. I'm not worrying about keeping one wet and blending it into the other. I'm just going to thin it out, which I'll kind of demonstrate in a minute. And again, with the sea, I'm still going to layer up these lighter bits on top and my darker shadows. I might mix those up at the same time. I'll have a little look. So I'm just thinking about these clouds as well as the sky and what that might be. So just going to have my little palette knife here ready. So when we're mixing up a tint, it's just thinking, isn't it? You know, how much white do I want to add in? And also with the sky, you may want to have two different colours in your sky. Sometimes at the top it's slightly darker. Now, I'm not, at the moment that's really, really too dark, so I'm obviously just putting in plenty of white in there. But, you know, even if I go really quite light with that, it's not going to give me that turquoisey effect at all. So you could add a little bit of cerulean blue, or you could go and mix with a bit of white and phthalo and see what happens there, and maybe add another colour slightly. So I'm going to take this out a moment, some of this light, some of this blue, so I don't end up mixing all of it, and just start to build the colour there and see if I'm liking that. So cerulean does warm things up a little bit because it's quite Mediterranean, isn't it, in colour? So I'm getting a little bit further now. I can see that as we're mixing. And again, just remember, we're going to have a really good experiment over all of these sessions. That's definitely the key. Don't stop exploring. Keep exploring, keep experimenting, trying out these new things, you know, do I want to add a bit more? And really, I suppose the only way of doing it is, you know, is testing it, isn't it? Deciding. I'm just adding a bit more water there, a bit more colour. Let's see. Yeah, I like that now. So when you get to the point where you've got something that you like, that's good. You know, sometimes you mix a colour up and it's nothing like the actual picture, but you just prefer it, and that's the one I would always say go with, really, because that's you going into that picture, isn't it? So I'm just going to make up a slightly lighter tint as well, that I may put a little bit further down towards the horizon because it's quite light down there. You know, we can have slight variations going on, can't we, within the whole sky? Sometimes you get quite a dark sky at the top within a photograph. Right, I think I'm happy to go with that. The thing is as well, depending on how warm your room is, because we're in the summer, is dependent on how it's going to dry. So you might need to work quite quickly today. You may not. So I'm just going to go in with this one. Start to get this in. So remember with acrylics as well, one of the things with them is, you know, you need to get plenty of coverage in there. So how much you thin it down is entirely up to you. I've got to go in right-handed here, look, because it's underneath there. There we go. And then I'm just going to go in with a slightly lighter, similar tone underneath at the bottom, just to make things a little bit more interesting there. Still a tint, but just lighter. Just adds a little bit of interest sometimes to have those couple of different tones in. And you can work them, you know, we can work it sideways, can't we, backwards and forwards until you end up with no line or linear area underneath. Or if you love the texture, then put them, you know, make it linear. Yeah, is there any other colours you might want to pop on there? I'm looking at this other blue. I was wondering whether I want to add a tiny bit. I think I'll use this blue that I've mixed down here with some of those darker clouds. So interestingly, those darker clouds that are over the top actually layer over the light ones. So so what I'd be thinking about with these clouds, I'm going to go in with a round brush now with this, is I'm actually going to thin down this white quite a bit more than I would normally when I'm putting acrylic on. Because obviously if I go over the top of there with that, you can see it on the tester paper, it's going to be very bright. But these clouds are really quite wispy and light coloured. So we can go over with a thinner layer with acrylics, which is nice. So it's almost kind of like not quite as thin as a watercolour. It's not running, but it's really, really very loose. Try it again over there. So what we want when we're building up layers of cloud is we want to be able to maybe see what's going on, through it and be a little bit translucent, which is what is happening if it's very thin. So it's so thin at the minute, the camera's not picking it up because it's watery, but it will do in a while. And I just kind of go in and just make some kind of little movements. You can go like round in circles to make these clouds. And wherever I'm seeing them, I'm just popping them on. We can always build them up. It's easier to build them up than have to take them off, because it's difficult to take them off. More difficult. I mean, we could just paint over and start again, to be honest, but I think the loose, when you start to feel much more freedom with your brush, that's when your clouds actually work out much better. I know it sounds a strange thing to say, but it's that kind of having that lightness and not being afraid to have a go with it that works quite well. And then any areas of cloud that are a bit thicker, they're a bit brighter, then just go in with build up your white without watering it down. There's not too many on here, to be fair. Maybe a bit in the middle there, that's a bit brighter, but it's not like some clouds where, it's they're very kind of moody. You get like all sorts of colours. These ones are quite light and airy. So I'm really picking out really small amounts of it. There we go. And then it's thinking about, the dark clouds in there as well. So in here, again, it's just depending on how you interpret that colour. I'm going to go and start with this blue base that I've got, which was actually just ultramarine and white, but I'm going to add a small amount of purple to it. And there's so many ways you can mix these colours. So that's kind of more bluey purple. The other way of doing it is you could use a little bit of Payne's grey or something. Or you can even put a little tiny bit of brown in. So if I go in with just Payne's grey there, and I add a bit of purple, just kind of illustrating the difference really. So that's Payne's grey and purple. That one is blue and purple. They're very similar, aren't they? But just ever so slightly different. I could even go in and put a bit, say, a tad of like rose and blue. Try that. Or I've got pinky here, that will be fine. Or, alizarin crimson is another one to try. So let's try a bit of this blue mix here. Got a bit of rose in there. A bit more. It's amazing. Sometimes the effects we get there. Now at the moment, that's less dark, isn't it? So that's like this. But again, you could try a tiny bit of I'll put tiny bit of brown in there. Let's see. Really small. That just kind of knocks the colour down a little bit, makes it not quite as raw, as light. So that's got. There we go. So I'll try that. So as I said, there's so many different ways of making these kind of colours. And if that's too dark, you know, you can always make it a bit brighter again, put a bit more pink back in it or whatever, or a bit more blue. Just experimenting, aren't we? So, you know, clouds a similar colour 3 ways we've got there. There you go, that's a bit similar to the other one. And again, I'm going to thin them down a little bit. So I'm going to choose the one I'm going to go for. Let's see, I think I'm going to go for this one. Maybe I won't, maybe I'll put this one on. And then just really lightly, because it's a bit more watery, and again, you know, it gives us that translucent. I'm just kind of dropping that on a little bit more like watercolor. And if that's too thick, then you can always just put the tiniest bit of white back into the mix if it feels too heavy, the colour. It's all to experiment. And we're just wisping it round. Those do seem to overlap the clouds underneath, actually, these green ones this time. Sometimes it's the other way around, isn't it? So made those a little bit lighter. That's a little bit over this side at the top. And all we can do is try and mimic the shapes that it makes and build that up. Right, I'm just going to and then, you know, got a little bit underneath, so I might make that more bluey, for example, or lighter under here. So we're just working out what we think we can see in here. Just popping it in accordingly. It might be when it starts to dry, you might think, oh, actually, I want a bit more light in there because it's dried and I can hardly see it. And that's the beauty of just building it up a bit more if that's what you want to do. Building it up a bit. There we go. So again, this is gonna, it'll start to feel like more skylight once we've got some of the, you know, the background in as well. So it's kind of hanging there on its own at the moment. And then we can start to think about the sea as well. So, you know, what tones can we see in there? I'm going to pop this, make this a bit Payne's grey. So this little bit where the top of the headland is, because I'd like to keep it a little bit kind of darker, a bit moodier in colour. And I'm putting no detail on that whatsoever because we can just see some lumps and bumps with it. I want to keep it nice and natural. We don't want it to come forward because we've got loads of detail on there. We want it staying firmly in the background. And over this side, it's quite dark, isn't it? But again, you can just choose the kind of darkness that you want to pop in there. And then over this side, there's definitely something there over the top, isn't there? Whether it's the other side of the headland here or something, but it's so fine. So I'm just going to go in and really thin that down, pop that in there. Maybe put a bit of this light purple colour in it, just so it makes it you know, less obvious over here. It's almost part of this sea, isn't it? But it's just that slightly bit darker. And we can kind of work on those details a bit if we want to, as we go later on. Right, there's a gap here. If anybody's observing that as well. So with the sea, I mean, it's beautiful and so tranquil, isn't it? It's got all these lovely colours in there. So we're looking at, your shadowy colours, your kind of mid-tones, and then any other colours that you can see in there. So it's a really good one for observing. I'm going to go in with some Payne's grey again. And I'm going to use some of this colour, this blue that I mixed earlier. So I quite like that. It's quite, it's almost a bit of a moody colour actually, but really light. So I'm going to go over, this will be my dark colour within there, which looks like that. I might even go a bit darker in some areas actually. But then I'm going to work in other areas over the top, and I'm not worrying, to be honest, about my blending. But if you are, you want to work a bit quicker when you're mixing up your other colours. So you could use the edge, because we've got all these lovely waves, the edge of a thick brush. The only reason, like a flat brush, that's what I used this morning, because I'm working very tiny tonight, so it's a bit difficult for me to get my big brush in. But I did use the edge of it because it's just really nice this morning to do that. When you've got a big piece, it kind of like, you get these lovely areas of it. So I'm kind of going in with my darker colours. And I'm happy to kind of create lines in there. If you don't want that, you can paint the colours in whilst it's still damp at the side. I'm just kind of bringing these in. They almost come around, don't they, these? I'm going to go over the top with the light ones, to be fair. But I'm getting these darker ones in a little bit to start with. Really transfix it when you start looking at the shapes of these waves and everything. I'm not worrying about the where the waves are breaking either, because we can put that over the top in acrylics we can. And just really kind of have a little look at what you can see there. Now, while we're thinking about it, it's like, is there any other even darker areas? And I'm going to get that one in. So there's just like where the wave breaks here. I want it slightly darker. I'm just going to mix a bit of that in. I'm going to pop this in whilst that is damp here. Just kind of, I just like kind of make little ziggy zaggy shapes like that. Just getting that up under where the wave is breaking there. But I prefer to get the shadow in first, so that it doesn't flatten down that lovely, wave top. So wherever else you can see, any other darker areas as well, be sure to pop those in. Most of it's here, to be fair. Really lovely observing what's going on in here. Darker patches. There we go. Um, and then thinking about, are there any other, before you go light, are there any other colours, nice bright colours or whatever, or even muted colours you want to put in? And this is where I'm going to add some pinky purples in here, just because I really like them, and that's what I'm feeling, I'm seeing a bit. So I just don't want them to be too obvious. I want it fairly tonal, so it's similar. So just going to put them where I think I can see them. Because they're kind of purple base, I'm not worrying too much. If I was putting this on and it was, say, a warm, really warm colour, I'd have to think about not mixing it up too much, but I'm not worrying. I'm actually going to blend that by adding a bit more water. Like that. Wherever you see these colours, I mean, it just follows that lovely kind of shoreline, doesn't it? And then again, having a little think about like those lighter ones. So keeping it nice and fresh. So I'm going to go in with some similar colours that are in the sky. So I'm going to have to mix it a bit because again, it's, when we're talking about temperature, everything's drying here really fast. Which is the only downside sometimes of acrylics. When it's warm, you have to work quite fast. Okay. So then we're just going to go in, it's not the lightest, it's not the waves, but it's just bringing in just a little bit of a lighter colour into this water as well. So we've got all those different shades going on. It just gives our sea a little bit of depth, really. Just getting really sucked into those lovely lovely colours. Lighter areas, and shapes, because it really does pull round with the coast, doesn't it? It's beautiful. Up close, it might look quite textured, but if you can give yourself some distance to have a little look at it, so that'll be good. So I'm just popping in some little highlights on here where I think you can see them, but I've got to be careful it's not everywhere, otherwise our sea can end up a little bit too multicoloured if we're not careful. So we're thinking about where we really need it. And then we can go in with our waves. So again, you can water down a bit of white, just a little tiny bit if you want to. And we can build that up as well. I'm going to go with a smaller brush for that, little round, just because this is such a tiny picture. But obviously you can scale up if you're not too small. And then all I'm doing here is kind of getting a bit of a, it's just wiggling it round the edge of the, to get these wave shapes, just like where they're breaking, just kind of wiggle them. Because that's what they are, aren't they? Like backwards and forwards, so you get them breaking. And follow the pattern, really. So some of them are breaking a bit earlier. It does tend to follow, doesn't it, this pattern all the way around. And it looks really odd when you first put one or two on, but once you're building them up into a group, that's when it starts to change quite a bit. But yeah, don't be frightened of kind of like breaking the line up, making it a little bit wiggly. And then following the other, any other sets of where it might be breaking as well. And then the more you do of those, the more it starts to feel like the sea, doesn't it? It's one of those where it's just a process of building them up. And then all, a little bit it's really fascinating, isn't it, when you start to really look at them. And then when you're looking, are there any more, or are there any other areas that are a bit lighter? There we go. That's all we can do is just kind of build it up. And then as our experience of these waves comes on a bit more each time we do a picture with waves, it changes again. So it's always a really good place to start. So I'm just going to take a pause there, see how you're all getting on before we come on and we start to think about sand and dunes and things like that. Okay, so having a little think this time about the warmer colours. So I'm going to switch over. Let's show my brushes that are really, really clean. This is the devil where it can actually, if you've got any at the base of your brush that's blues, it bleeds into your other colours that are warm, then you're straight into having muddied your colours. So we want to keep our other warmer colours nice and warm. So I am just making sure the base of that is out as well. And I'm switching my water now at this point, so it's a good point for a water change. There we go, I think that's sorted there. Give this one a bit of a wish round as well. You can always like just kind of, push your brushes up, you push your bristles carefully against the glass and just roll it. That's what I do. So I'll show you what I mean. Rolling of brushes tends to get them out. So I've got my jar and I'm just gently rolling the bristles at the side there. So I'm not kind of going like laying them out by squashing them. It kind of gets it from the top a bit better. There we go. All right, so let's have a look at these different tones that we've got here. So I'm actually going to change my little palette here. I'll start with a fresh one. I've got some colours on the other one that I might use. But I'm just going to go and have a little look at these tones that you get, because some of the sand, when it's wet, is a different tone to some of the other sands. And they can be so varied. I mean, this one that we already showed you is just so pink and warm, because it's obviously been taken at dusk or at dawn, hasn't it? You know, and that sun's just coming up, so it's a really warm effect. And sometimes if it's in the shadow, like which is the other one, this one is very much in the shadow there. It's really dark until where the shadow of all of this of the dunes are coming over, and then it's only warm here. So it's really interesting how different sand can look. You know, this one, we've got patches where the shadow is, but again, it's quite a dull sandy colour. And there's the other one. Oh yeah, the other one is this one where it's a bit, it's warmer, but you can go, it can be really, really warm as well to look at. So a lot of it depends on time of day and where it is, and you know, how the light is catching it and everything. But pretty much what I would say is, I'm just going to transfer a couple of colours from this palette. I'll bring my white over. I'm going to bring this bit of brown over as well. I'm also going to add a tiny bit of my purple from this palette. I think, what is she doing purple for? Just because you might see a bit purple in that one there, so I'm bringing it over just in case you do. But I'm also going to bring a bit of red. This is kind of a warmer red, so it's not like the alizarin crimson, which is more, you know, blue based. This is just, say, ordinary kind of red, really. If you've got some burnt sienna, which is the really kind of warm, a lot of them come in the kits. It's a very warmy red, almost the colour of, let me think, a fox. Maybe not quite as bright, but you know, that kind of warm red, warm brown, sorry. I'm also bringing some yellow, and this is, I'm just going to show you three or four ways to get to sand colour, depending on what you've got actually. And I'm also going to go in with some buff titanium, which is unbleached white, so it looks a little bit, so it's basically titanium white with no bleach in it, and that's what it would look like if it wasn't bleached. But it's quite a good base. It's very stone coloured. It's not warm, there's no warmth of it, and no harsh brightness either. So there's quite a few colours there. So if I go in with some of the different colours for like a base colour, and then you can make it cooler or warmer. So if I go in, for example, with buff titanium to make this sand colour, what else might I put in there? Yeah, and a little bit of yellow and a tiny bit of red. But again, you can have, it's about experimenting to see what colour it comes out at. So this is buff titanium in yellow. So it's making this buff titanium slightly warmer. A little bit of in there. Still quite cool. So if your sand is cool, like cold colour, then that would be good. But I'm now going to go and warm it up with a bit of this burnt sienna. And you'll be able to decide how much you want to put in. I mean, obviously there's lots of different tones in here. I'm just going to show you how you can keep warming things up until you get to the point that you want it. There we go. So that's much warmer now. So let's test that. Okay, so you can start with a base like that. And you can warm it up even further. So I could take a bit of that base and I could add even more, like I could actually add a little bit of red to it. So you know that pinky sandy tone we were looking at before? Now at the moment that's quite strong. So I'd want to maybe add a little bit of white there. I don't want loads of white because what it can do is make it a bit too pastel and take out all the warmth altogether. But sometimes if it's, you just need to kind of knock the colour back a little bit with a little bit of a lighter. So that's more pinky now. Let's have a test on there so you can see the difference. It's warming up. There we go. Now I can also create, so it's a bit lighter, I can also create this kind of sandy wash, like here where it's wet, this wet sand, and it's also, so you get like when it washes back out, it leaves it quite darker. So I can use the same base there, what I started with, but instead of warming it up like I have done by adding more red, I'm going to cool it down. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of this purple in there. And again, it's just looking at how you're building it up and how much colour to put in. It's not till you do it, you really will know. But the purple contains blue base. So we know that's, this purple does anyway. So we know what we're doing actually is cooling down that colour. So let's have a little look at that underneath it. So for that bit here, we've got that darker colour. So we can really kind of warm sand up or cool sand down just by having a base there. Now I can make that even darker if I want to. I fear this is going to dry before I put it onto paper, but that's fine. I'll just mix some more up. Or you could put a tiny touch of dark brown in there if you want to go even darker. So we can see like there's a full mix of those, and that was just by using the buff titanium, a bit of yellow and some burnt sienna as a base, and then we warmed it up with red to make it pinky and a bit of white, and we cooled it down with a bit of purple or a bit of purple and brown, tiny amounts. So the same sand, if you don't have buff titanium, we can do by a white base. So just normal titanium white, some brown, some dark brown. Again, you've got to put this in slowly because it's a strong colour. So straight away, that's taking the colour out, making it, well, it's making it darker tone. So I'm just mixing that to start with. Now, it's not going to give us the sand colour yet because we're not there. Just trying to start with something that smooth that over the work. There. Then we want to think about warming that up a little bit. So I'm going to go in with the yellow as before, as here. So white, brown, yellow. If I want to warm it up a bit more, going back in with the burnt sienna there. And keep adding that till we're happy. Get in there. It's still quite, it's not still not as warm as this one, but that's okay. Just keep adding a bit more. It's like trial and error. There we are. I might actually add a bit more yellow to that as opposed to just adding brown. So that's warming that up again. So, okay, so I would be quite happy with that base. It's not dissimilar to this one. And we've got there completely different way. So that's the really interesting thing with paint. So again, we've got this base, which is very similar, isn't it? Because we've gone round the other way to do it. So these sandy colours and the stony colours you can make in a similar way. And again, I would take some of that base, think about making it more pinky for a warmer tone. Warm it up. It's very pink at the minute, so again, I'm just going to pour a bit of white, a bit more titanium white. It's not so harsh. And then we've got that colour there. Maybe add a bit more white in there, but you don't have to. There we go. So yeah, so this is like, you know, just using what your knowledge of the different tones to get a similar result. So again, take a bit more of that warm one, and I want a cool one there. Now you could even, you know, instead of using purple, you could use a tiny bit of blue or something and see what happens. It'll make it much cooler. The only danger with it is it can come across a little bit muddy because it's what effectively you're making green, aren't you? Because you're putting blue and yellows together. But depending on where you are, sometimes you do get that tone. I don't think that's appropriate for there, but if you did one of the shadowy ones, let me see. Here, if you kept adding purple to that, that would be much more, much cooler. Look. Yeah, so you would get there eventually, but I don't think blue's not that's the best colour to add, to be fair, unless it's very shadowy. Just add a bit of white in there as well. So yeah, so there's all of these tones we can make just with different colour sets, you know, different colours that we've got to make sandy colour, which is lovely, isn't it, that we can do that. So I'm just going to go in now and start to kind of put those colours into place on here, paint those in. So I'm going to go in with my shadow first, as I always do. Just got to remember to make it warm enough. And just pop these into place where you like them. I think I might actually put a little bit more purple base in there. And we just really follow, let's put it on my hand, and following those, you know, we're following the edge of the sea. Whatever patterns we can see there. And then up the top, I'm going to pop a little bit of a beachy colour up there. Not too warm. I'm not going to put the one up there because I know we can see a little bit of it, but if I make it too warm, it'll come forwards a little bit. It needs to be just a slightly bit darker than here. And then start to then pop in any of these colours for the sandy. You know, you can just choose one of your tones if you want to, whichever you prefer, and start to paint in. And again, we're kind of following around those lovely swirls and kind of colours that we can see. We can always go in and put lighter ones over the top, so that's not a problem at all. I'm just bringing underneath where it might go as well, the beach, underneath where I'm going round and following this round. And also mindful that I'm going to bring it in enough so that if these grasses, there's gaps in them, I know that there's going to be beach underneath it because we don't want to be having to paint in faffy little bits at all. That's fine, just bring it down where you think you need to bring it down to. You know, you can pop little, if you've got texture on your sand and things, you can put that on as well. And then obviously, again, you know, highlights as well. Putting the highlights on there. So I'm going to go for this more, like this slightly more yellow base. I'm going to add some white just to get a kind of a tint. And then I'm following this because again, you often get this slightly different colour near the bottom. Follow that round. It all adds to us knowing that this is the way the sea and beach you know, things that we've observed, and maybe we haven't actually took it really in, but our brain knows it. It's like, oh yeah, makes it feel more beach-like. And you can add, you know, even more highlights if you've got somewhere else on there. Also draws our eye in a bit, doesn't it, to the what's going on the front. You know, you might have some other patches in there. That you want to kind of highlight a little bit as well. And just to make slight difference of colour. Let's have a really good look and see what you want to put on or change or not change. There we go. So once you start to kind of look at the observe the colours, everything goes on quite quickly, doesn't it? That. And then we're down to our grasses really. So I tend to go in with my shadow first. So the biggest thing with grasses, especially coastal grasses, is we need a combination of a few things for it to be really effective. One of them is the dark, deep shadows because they're thick, and the nearer you are, you get more of these. You can observe more of them because you see the big gaps between. So we need to get those in. We also need contrasting colours with mid-tones. So, you know, often it's not just one mid-tone, like I can see green, but I can also see some yellowy colour in there as well. So we need to build those up and create the shape as we're going in the texture. And then finally, we need some pops of brights and highlights to really build it up even further. Because the warm colours and the brights will actually make it feel more rounded. And then it's how we can use brushes to get the effects on the ends as well. So I don't get the ends until a bit later. And how you get just a few crisscrossy ones over the top where the highlights are. So all those elements together will give us a really good grass. So I'm going to go get in this first with a, I would do it probably, I'm going to do it with a flat brush actually. So I need to get this, I'm going in with brown here. Dark brown, really dark brown. So, and this is a start, so I don't really know till I get in there where exactly the shadow is going to be because there's loads of it. So all you can do is put it in kind of best fit where you think. So I'm going to put the load up the middle. It doesn't matter if it's really dark. It'll feel a bit. Oh gosh, what have I done? That's okay. Don't worry, because we'll break it all up. But it's better to have it in. And what I'm doing is I'm bringing these darks in between where I think it might go, but we might have to go in and put a little bit more in. So don't worry too much about that. I'm going to have to put more on my paper as well because it's getting a bit too light, is that brown? Because I've thinned it out a little bit too much with my blush, with the water. So I need to remember to go back in more thickly with this. So it gets a good coverage and we get that really dark, that real darkness in there. So I'm just using the top of my of a flat brush. What you tend to do if you get quite a bit of paint on, it starts to separate, and that's really good because it's creating some of the softness. So I just use it. I'll press down a bit to get the paint on, but then as I'm coming near the edges, I'm just softly pulling it softly. So that's how we can use a flat brush really effectively, just by using a bit of the softness in there. So this is quite a dark bit in here. Now there are going to be other dark bits. So it's like a work in progress. It'll feel like it'll take a while before we get there, but that's okay. I'm going to add a little bit more in this corner. Just going to bring that softness up there. Where else have we got? I think that's probably where the darkest bit is. And then I'm just going to clear off that off my brush. Ready to think about some of those other areas, let's get some. So I'm looking at the other colours in here, and I'll add a green. Now I'm going just for a sap green or chrome green. It often is called as well. It's just kind of your ordinary kind of a leafy green. It's quite you can darken it off if you don't think it's dark enough. But what I'm looking for now, because there's so much going on and it overlaps, so this would be my last one to do because it overlaps that one. So I'm looking at getting these ones in and these ones first before I pop those over the top, if that makes sense. So what I want to do, I'm observing, what can I see? Just make sure this brush is clean. I'm going to put the green, well, mine's chrome green, looks sap green. Or another green you can experiment with. Because there's some quite chunks of it there. And this is where I have a bit of trouble when I'm demonstrating it because my brush is so long, look, I have these really long ones that it doesn't fit underneath my camera. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start to just look at where the bottom of some of these go. I'm using it softly at the top. Now, this isn't the final one. Don't worry if you get this like square bit. It's not the final bit. This is just building up the areas. We've got a lot more work to do on that before. So clear the end of the brush and start again. So you'll see a lot of mine is right on the end of the brush. If it goes down, I kind of clear it off and start again. So where else have we got? We've got a bit of an area here. And then this feels a bit warmer. It's this kind of middle section I'm really kind of trying to build up more of the a bit goes over here. So don't be frightened of also, bringing some of that lightly over the bottom here. And you can do that lightly. That doesn't have to be pressed down and lots on it. Just the top of your brush, just kind of dipping in. And again, the bottom's not finished. We'll soften down areas. It's just so we can get a start on it. The beautiful grasses, coastal grasses that we get in our country. We love them. Lots of people got fond memories of going between these grasses and playing as children. Probably before health and safety told us we shouldn't. But nonetheless, fun to hide amongst the safe sand dunes and things, isn't it? So here we go. So it's still poking out there. So I've got a little bit in here when I look. So you can only go one step at a time and start and build a bit more. So at the moment it's a bit, ooh, you know, it'll feel a bit intense. Like you think, what have I done over the top of this lovely painting that I've got so far? But don't fear. So here it's a bit more of a mixture, but there's some kind of up at the back there. So that's where I'm going to go. It's all we can do is observe and think, put in what we think is there. The biggest thing is to learn to softly pull that through with the end of your brush. That's the bit, rather than pressing down, is the soft flicking of the, and the more we use it, your brush, the softer it will feel. Like that. We're building that up. We haven't got any other colours on yet. Just looking at what we've got underneath. Okay. So I'm still not ready for this area yet. So we've got quite a bit to do under here. Softly does it, bottom. I've got a few coming down. So what we can do then is you can use the side, the side of your flat brush if you want to just bring a few of those strands in if you want over the base, or you can start to use I tend not to put my fan brush in until I've got some base layers in first. So I'll show you that in a minute. Now, before I do anything else or add any colours, I'm going to go back in and check for shadows in this area now. You know, what do I need to paint in? And I'm just going to go to a round brush like this for the moment. And I'm going to go in and start to kind of just use the edge, the end of my brush, the tip of it, the round brush, just to put in some of these more individual strands between all the dark spot bits that we couldn't perhaps work out what to put down first, because you don't often know. Difficult to see them until you start on the doing it. And I'm just softly bringing that down. You often get them at the base, don't you? It's very shadowy at the base because it's so deep. But it may be that some of those, you know, are down this side. Just pop a few in. Doesn't have to be perfect. It all builds up into a picture. We've still got to overlap with more colours yet. Make lovely shapes as well. So it's really nice to get sucked in. With these lovely shapes. You know, it might feel a bit shadowy at the moment. That's okay. We're just putting in the darkest ones really. And again here, so where you've got this, you can actually go into some of those some of the bases and really start to just pick out exactly how it creates the shape in, you know, following the patterns at the bottom, working between some of that green. We're still not going to really see much in terms of like the fullness yet because we're still just building up the base layer there. What I am going to do though is I'm going to just keep bringing some of these darks over here between. Now I can see those a bit better. Now I've got this one clump up here. Just so we've got something to build on there. We've got contrast between the two. Okay, so I've got a few bits in there which can build up again. And I may put a few greeny ones up here. But this is probably the main contrast as well. So now I can start to see that what's going on there as well. I'm going in just with my brush for this one rather than my fan brush for the moment, just because I've got this brush handy really. So, you know, there's so many different brushes that we can use for this. That's one of the beauties. I'm going to bring those greens just a little bit through. I'm not going properly working the ones over the top here at all. I'm putting in where I can see some green tones down here. Just to help. That'll help us get some contrast. Okay, so as we're building, then we can have a look and look at some of the other colours involved in here. So I'm just going to clear off with some brush. So this is where you think about like the yellows and things like that. So we may end up with some that are a little bit of a mishmash of the two. And so don't worry about that because we've still got other brights to build in. Even when we're building this next colour on top, I'm going to go in with a bright yellow. This one is chrome. Is it chrome yellow? No, it's just it's like cadmium yellow. It's a warmer yellow. And again, I might just pop it on the tip. So I'm starting to look at some of the colours here. And I'm going to pull these over the top of those where I think they are coming. Now again, it's not going to be perfect, but we can work into them. Because we're just building, it's like the building blocks is this. I'm just building in, you know, wherever we can see these yellowies. Now, it's what I was saying, sometimes you might not be able to see it really clearly, but we'll break this up further. You can try your fan brush by just popping some colour. A bit more yellow on here, because I'm on You can try your fan brush. Now, when we're doing trees and foliage, it's slightly different. But what you can do is pull it up like that. Because we've got a contrasting colour now. Now you can pull that right over the top now. Can you see? It's going to make it like thinner. But again, you'll see, if you look at my fan brush there, it's not a perfect fan. I've kind of pulled those apart a little bit. Like those gaps are really helpful to us. If you can separate it a bit, that might help. I'm still going over with these yellows because it's such a yellowy. And what I'm doing is now the fan is helping me to create those softer shapes going up over the top now. So we haven't got a huge contrast yet. We have got that. We're starting to build up those colours a little bit. So we can work that in the opposite way, by the way, and bring these down as well. Or start right from the bottom and go up. You go in one sweep upwards, that's easier. There we are. That's starting to work a bit better now because we're going over the brown. But if you haven't got a fan brush, that's fine. Just splay out your other brush. And what I am going to do, I'm going to go that way a little bit as well with these ones. Over here. That's going. So we're building this up. So we can make it soft if we want to, even though we've got all the other things going on. So what we need now is another contrasting colour a little bit. So we're still getting a little bit, we're adding depth to this all the time. So have a little look at what other colours you can see in there. Now it's quite straw coloured to me. It almost looks a bit beachy. I don't know if you're seeing a similar thing to me, but I'm going to go in with that now. Mix up another sandy colour, I think. And I'm going to use some of that, like it's almost straw-like, isn't it? It's just what happens, isn't it, when it's in the summer. And I'm going to pull some of that across as well because it's very straw-like there. And then I'll soften that as well. And then eventually we'll just have the odd view going across as well. So I'm just going to mix some more sand colour, soften out. Might make it a bit more pinky. But also, you could also experiment with like an orange or some more of your sienna on its own as well before you put your highlight on. And see what happens. Because sometimes, I've said this before, just the odd pop of colour, and I'm going to put it on a couple of, I'm only going to put it on a couple of bits on this brush where I'm just bringing in just a bit more vibrancy. Look, can you see? Just with a couple of these, just to add a little bit more contrast. Now you could even go with something purple or whatever colours you see in there. And just bringing in it, what it does, it just adds an extra dimension to what you're doing. And you don't need to go mad with it. Just pick a few areas. And that's what I said, orange would work as well, you know. We'll bring a bit here over this side before I add in lots. I'm just underneath that colour there because it feels. I'm going to bring in a little bit of this darker in as well in between here. This is why just having a sort of little area of your fan brush here is quite helpful. I'm going to soften that down a bit. I've just made that a bit harsh. Because you're not then having to go into, you know, to each of the areas. Okay, so then I would finish off now with this highlight colour. Again, you know, if you want to wash your fan brush off, just dab it off so that you still get those nice, you know, little pieces, and you can go in like, so I'm going in with this beach colour now, because these are the straw bits that really now will stand out. So just going in, you can just do a couple of bits. Just have it on a couple of the areas, one or two on your, and just get these little highlights going over. And it's much softer, isn't it? Same here, these are quite light and straw-like over here. And then we've got these really straw-like ones here. But again, you know, you can add yellows back in, etc. So you're getting some quite good, and then some go over that way. So that's like using one brush, but of course you can go in, and I would recommend to do that actually, is where you start to pick out some real individual strands as well in here. You know, what we got, where you can, you know, because we get these front ones, don't we? And they kind of go backwards and forwards. So I would just go in literally and pick out these ones at the front, kind of give it a lot more meaning. And they're a bit haywire. So just have a little look at where they go, crisscrossing. And just kind of, I think, here, there, and everywhere and across. So we're getting these contrast. So it's a combination of brushwork and then popping in a few as well, you know. And it may well be, as you're going through, you think, oh, I've taken out too much of that colour or whatever. There's always an opportunity to go back in and put it in. I've taken too much yellow, I can see that. So I'll just put a bit more on this particular single brush. And where it builds up, I'll just put in those singles. But it's made it much easier because we've already gone in and got all that, like all that under work in first. So when we just do add a few little bits here and there, it's a much easier process. You know, same with anything that's a shadow. If we've got too much shadow, or we want to pop some shadow in, by all means do that. Or you might want to pop a bit of green back in, for example. I know I do over here. So I'm just going to go in and just do that as I go, just individually. Because I don't need to go back to layer up any more paint on the fan brush at the moment, because I just want to put key colours back in to my palette. In fact, I may even make that a bit more rusty at the top with a bit more of a, just for fun. Yeah, you can use an old bristly brush for this as well. There we go. And you know, so it's your interpretation of it, you know, with all the colours. And just a few really helpful techniques there to help you kind of do it. And I mean, each one will be different. Every time you do grasses, it'll feel different again. But the most important thing is you've got, you know, it just gives you some real ideas as to what you can do with that. And then, you know, if you've got any edges at the top that need softening, you can just do that, you know, with your little brush at the top. And you can always soften a bit of lighter colour on top if it's too harsh. So yeah, so it's really interesting what we can do with a selection of brushes and how we kind of approach it with the different brushes as well and the different colours. So that will be my final pause this evening, and I hope that's been really helpful. It's a very enjoyable topic. So I hope it's gone really well.